Welcome back to Beer Brackets, everybody. This is a big one because we have reviewed quite a few Weihenstephaner beers on the channel before. This is one that I never thought I'd get to try, man, unless I actually went to Germany, because I'd never seen this. You can't get this one in Canada. I had to come down to Florida to see you. And I took a bunch of these back in my luggage because I saw this at a little local liquor store when I was shopping for stuff to maybe bring if we were going to be hanging out. We wanted to going out to a bar. We didn't even wind up like hanging out somewhere where we could have these beers. So I just took them back to Canada with me in my luggage. But man, when I saw it on the shelf, it was like one of those beautiful beer exploration moments where it was just kind of like, oh, it was glowing on the shelf.
I know what you're talking about, man. That's a special moment when you walk in a store, no matter where you are, and then you see that one beer that you said, I can't believe they have it here. Exactly.
Especially this one. And any Weihenstephaner beer, I had a similar thing being in Vermont when I saw the Vitus, and I was unexpectedly found it. I was just blown away to be able to get that and try it and bring it back and review it with you, man, in the Beer Brackets pub. I let you know before we started filming that there was something I wanted to discuss about this beer. There's a little bit of beer confusion, my friend. The Weihenstephaner Original, or as it says here, the Original Premium Lager. I was doing my beer research before we started this review, and so I was looking for details on this beer. And I would find the Weihenstephaner Original Helles that looks similar with a similar style label, but not the same beer. If you go to, I went down a deep beer rabbit hole. If you go to the European Weihenstephaner website, this beer, as it is, as we have it in front of us, does not exist. All they have listed is the Weihenstephaner Original Helles with the same style label, same colors and everything. But if you go to the English website, which I'm assuming is the American, the .com, not the .de, then they have this listed and the separate Helles in the can, which I know you've featured on the channel before. Yep.
I thought I featured the bottle version in the top 3 lager, but I think I might have featured also the Helles in the can in a different episode. I think you might be right on that.
I might be thinking of the Fest beer that you featured in the can.
I've definitely featured the Fest beer in the can, and I've seen the Helles in the can at Total Wine.
It's got kind of like the baby blue coloring to it. Yeah.
Yes, correct. Like it has a almost baby blue and white, so they went for that Bavarian style.
There's a bit of a beer mystery around this. I don't know if this particular one is only a North American export. I have no idea because according to the European website, it does not exist. So if anybody knows, let us know in the comments down below. Because I know these videos, Weihenstephaner videos, we get a lot of viewers from Europe who check it out and they tend to, garner a lot of interest. If anybody's watching this and they know.
But it is interesting that they use 2 completely different names. Never really put 2 and 2 together there. So that's very interesting.
It's interesting. I'm excited anytime we have a Weihenstephaner beer. If you're curious about the history of Weihenstephaner, obviously go check out our Hefeweizen episode. We go deep into the history of Weihenstephaner, as we have in many other episodes where we feature their beers. So in this episode, we can just jump right into it, man. We're going to look at the aroma, the taste, the mouthfeel, the finish, and the overall beer experience. And we're going to come up with a final score on 5 for this beer. Let's do it, buddy.
Let's do it, my friend.
You've had this one before, right?
I have, yes, my friend. I've tried it a couple of times.
Multiple times, okay.
Like I was mentioning when we did that episode of the top easy accessible lagers, this one here is relatively available here in the US.
That's right. I forgot you featured this one on there.
All right, my friend.
Aroma cheers, buddy.
Aroma cheers. Okay. The aroma is interesting. It has like this very clean, crackery malt presence. There's not too much to it, aside from the fact I find it like very clean and present and easy to identify. There's a very distinct German hop character to it. I don't know if I can quite pinpoint it because we've tried over the years like a few different German Helles. Like you can almost like say, oh yeah, I definitely can see that's what they're going for here. There's nothing that is completely jumping out of the glass in terms of like wowing effect. I just find this beer very precise in what it does. Like precise, it's very almost like calculated.
That's a good word, yeah.
While like in some situations that can be good, some others can be bad. It depends a little bit on the mood you're in. I think one of the big praises that I can do to Weihenstephaner is that they are always very clear and they achieve their goal. It's not something that jumps out of the glass and stands out, but I think it's well done. I don't think I would give it a 3, but I would definitely give it a 2.5. What do you think, my friend?
It's actually really interesting. The longer that you have it out like this, the aroma kind of changes a little bit. You know, of course, this beer brewed according to the Bavarian purity law, so just there's no adjuncts in there like a lot of other big lagers that we've reviewed. There's that sort of processed excess maltiness that you can get on them. Of course, this doesn't have that, but it's more along the styles of that kind of lager, something that you'd find more in sort of like an American style lager where it's very sort of malty on the aroma in a sweet way, but it's nice though. It comes off, again, because it's Weihenstephaner, because, you know, again, there's nothing being added into there that isn't a natural ingredient. It smells really nice. It's done really, really well. I think this is how that sort of sweet malt is supposed to come off. It's like a really well done Budweiser or something, right? It's just in that same realm, but if it was like a well-made beer with very few ingredients, I will give it to it. It's got an amazing aroma. I'll match you on that 2.5. Now, buddy, going for a taste.
Cheers.
Okay.
See.
Okay.
Now I got to be careful here because there's 2 reasons, and now that I took a sip, I immediately remember what are some of the characteristics that I really like about this beer. On the aroma, there's nothing jumping out. On the taste, I find that maltiness really shines in a positive way.
It does.
Because that initial like almost sweetness that you described, which I agree with, on the taste is where really you get just that crackeriness, and there's no highly processed malt flavor that you get in a lot of massively produced lagers. When you take that sip, you immediately feel the quality of the malt, and then you're left with those hops. And I'm not talking about the finish yet. I'm just talking about just the first impression of the beer when it hits your palate. Everything is very quick, precise, again, very clean. Other examples, Helles style lagers like that I prefer. I tend to prefer them because they give me a little bit more of that. But again, when I look at it in this setting, there's nothing I can fault it with. So I think I'm going to stick with the 2.5 because it's well done, it's clean and precise.
You know, it's when the only time I ever had it was before coming to meet, actually the first night. So I did a trip down to Florida recently to come down and see you for your 40th birthday. And it was a very quick trip. And I went to the store to get some stuff and I saw the 6-pack of this and I picked it up and gave you one for this review and brought some home. But I had one in the hotel room that night and I poured it out into a glass in the hotel room. So, trying to get the whole experience and get the aroma and everything. I'm liking it a lot more than I did that night. That night, I remember that just being very sort of nondescript. Like, I couldn't really pull any character. It was just very bland.
Pinpoint.
I found it very bland. But now, maybe it's just the moment being in the pub with you. Now it's like my beer senses are a little bit more focused. I'm very happy that I'm actually being able to sort of like pull some more interesting characters out of it. For me, there's a little bit of sweetness on the taste, like you would expect from a big macro lager, like you said, but done in a way where it's just so nice. Like you feel like you're tasting real fresh malt instead of just sort of processed malt flavoring. Every sip I take, I'm liking it more and more. There's a really interesting sweetness to it. I'm not getting much along the lines of hops. There's a little bit of a bitter kick, but yeah, I'll stick with 2.5 actually. Oh my God. I was coming into this expecting to rate it like lower than this, but wow. Okay. 2.5s all the way through so far. Now the Mouthfeel Buddy Beer Brackets tradition. We got to do a refresher here.
Of course. It's the magic of the beer brackets pub.
Yes, sir. Indeed. So we can get a fresh mouthfeel reading on this beer. Cheers, buddy. What do you think?
Cheers, my friend.
Wow.
So the mouthfeel of this beer is interesting. I've never had it on tap, so I can't speak to that. I've always only had it in bottle. And I always find that I would almost want, like everything is perfect. The carbonation is there, like it cleanses the palate. But to my liking, I would almost wish there was a little bit more carbonation to this beer. Just a minor, so I'm going to bring it down to a 2 just because within that category of style, like I've had others that I tend to prefer.
Yeah.
So just a minor detail, but again, we're staying with very classically well done Bavarian Helles.
Zero oiliness, stickiness. It's very mild. It's very laid back as a mouthfeel, like you were saying. It'd be nice if there's a bit of a sharper carbonation to it, a little bit sort of like soapy. If you're thinking like 10 is like a super sharp sort of throat hit kind of carbonation, almost like you're drinking like a ginger beer, and then 0 is flat. This is probably somewhere like around a 5, I would say, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere in the middle. Could use a little bit more for sure, but man, it's clean. Yeah, I'd 2. I'd agree with the 2. So the finish, I think, might be the most interesting part of this beer for me, at least to describe in this setting. What do you think about it?
I agree, my friend. Let me take another sip just to give you the best description I possibly can.
Please do. Please do. It's like sweet.
Yes, there is a little bit of classic presence of that malt that almost lingers into this a slight sweetness. It depends a little bit like the point where you're coming from, right? So if you're comparing it to a lot of other Helles, Munich Helles lagers, you know, might say, oh, well, I like this one more or this one, etc. But if you're coming from the point of accessibility, lagers that are easily accessible and compared to a lot of others to similar price point and so on, I think this one here has like an incredible negative space, as we've called it. Like, it's just like,
getting into the negative like beer space. I love it.
The malt. Yeah, it shows you the malt, the hops, just enough to be inviting on the taste and the aroma. And then on the finish is just a hint. And yes, there is a little bit of lingering maltiness, sweetness, but it's very little. It's so drinkable and refreshing. A lot of the other Munich Helles tend to have like a little bit more of a presence, which might be a good or a bad thing depending on what you like. But I do think that this has to be praised for how accessible it is. Because of all of that, like I remembered like why I at the time I had featured it, I'm going to stick with the 2.5. It's not quite a 3 because it's nothing, again, wowing, but it's extremely well done for how accessible it is. Friend, what do you think?
It's funny that you mentioned like a little bit of sweetness. For me, there's not a lot, but the big takeaway that I get from the finish on this is actually sweetness, like from the malt. It's not overpowering. It doesn't linger too long. It's actually anything that you get, any character that you get from this beer is gone in like 2-3 seconds. It's really quickly just sort of dissipates. It's really clean. But I get like this hit of sweetness, almost like vanilla.
Oh, nice.
It's interesting that, you know, we're drinking this 2 beers from the same 6-pack, literally, that we're drinking here. And it's, we're perceiving it a little bit differently in that way, which is interesting. Like that's the nature of this kind of thing, and different palates and, you know, different ways of thinking about things. But for me, that's what stands out the most. And I actually really like it. That's why I said the finish is probably one of the more interesting parts of this beer for me, because there's almost like that little, slightly like, vanilla-y kind of hit right away, just for a little bit. After you take a sip, it's there for like a second for me. And then it's just a little bit of hop, a little bit of malt, and it just sort of disappears. But I'm really enjoying that. So yeah, I will, what'd you give it, a 2?
I gave it a 2.5.
You gave it a 2.5. I will, I'll agree with that. I think so. We're matching the scores all the way through so far. I totally agree with that, man. As an overall beer experience, what do you think for the Weihenstephaner Original Premium Lager?
I think with this beer, the overall experience pretty much reflects like a bit what I've been saying throughout every single category. It's very drinkable. Does it have anything that stands out like in an incredible way? No, but let's not forget about the negative space. The fact that it's so well done and clean is a big plus, considering that it's not using any adjuncts. So I think a 2.5, my friend, is where I'm going to land with my overall score. I all the times I've had it, I've never been disappointed. What do you think?
This is probably one of the only reviews where by the end of filming this, I'm almost done the beer. I keep going back in for another sip. It's remarkable in what it does that it's so easy drinking. Like you said, there's a lot of negative space there. It hits you with like this flash of character when you take a sip. Yeah. And it's gone. And it makes you just want to go back in for another sip. And the fact that this is over, it's 5.1%, so it's not way over 5, but it almost drinks like a very light beer, like it would be 4 or 4.5. So I could see how this would be a little bit dangerous. Like I could very easily sit and drink quite a few of these without batting an eye. without any issues. It's basic enough that it'll appease any lager fan, whether you're a Coors Light drinker or whether you're a Helles drinker. This will appease anybody because there's character there, but it's also easy drinking. 2.5. Yeah. Weihenstephaner. Magicians. Wizards.
The wizards. The wizards.
Oh. So we had the same scores all the way through, and on our rating system, it comes out to 4 on 5 for Alessandro and myself, which is an excellent beer. I'm so happy that we get to, as we say, put this review on our bookshelf, almost, come close to completing the Weihenstephaner collection. There's still a couple left that we have to do if we can get our hands on them one day, but another Weihenstephaner beer in the books. What a good lager this was. Damn.
Analyzing it under the beer bracket scrutiny here in the pub showed me how sometimes a beer can also be about what's not there. And I think this is a good example because it's really playing well with this negative beer space as we discussed it. So I think that's why they're wizards, my friend.
Very well said, buddy. And for the first time in a Beer Brackets review, I believe, I will finish this beer.
Cheers, man.
Oh my God. So good. That says everything you need to know, everybody. Let us know down below. What do you think about the Weihenstephaner Original Premium Lager? If you haven't yet, see that beer bell down there? Click the beer bell. Because what that does, it lets you know when we're in the pub, and you can come hang out with us in the pub and have another beer with us and hang out. And whatever you do,
don't forget to close your beer brackets.
That's right. Cheers, everybody.